Another level of violence that we've seen in the United States and in our hemisphere is the cartel violence. And for so many years, the federal government had no response to it whatsoever, other than to treat it as a sort of law enforcement matter or a drug interdiction matter when it came to the Coast Guard or others. But the War Department is taking a slightly different tack on that as per the president's guidelines. Walk us through these new offensive operations that are being done to the cartels.
Absolutely, and you paint the picture perfectly there. This is not the previous administration. We have gone decades letting narco-terrorists run the Western Hemisphere effectively and traffic drugs into our country that kill Americans. Deadly fentanyl has ravaged young Americans across the country. It is totally unacceptable. And until President Trump and Secretary Hegseth, no one was doing anything about it. President Trump declared these narco-terrorist thugs FTOs early on in his administration, and since that point, the Department of War has gotten to work. We are taking out deadly narco-terrorists all across the region that threaten our people and that threaten the security of the homeland. And this is something that we're proud to be doing. Keeping our people safe is the ultimate goal of the Department of War. And that's what our troops sign up to do. That's what they're proud to do. And we are going to ensure that we continue this operation so that drugs don't kill Americans any longer. That is a non-negotiable for this department. We want to have secure borders and we want to have safe shores. Drugs cannot traffic through the Gulf of America any longer under this president.
When you look at the Gulf of America, when you look at the Caribbean, certainly, by the way, this, and as a prior Navy officer myself and someone who served in the Caribbean while stationed at Guantanamo Bay and under the auspices of Southern Command Southcom, this isn't the first time the U.S. military has been used for these types of interdiction operations or offensive operations. And it really strikes me as strange that the media is sort of just not talking about the full picture here. This is a historic mission of the United States Navy and the United States military.
Absolutely. And I've got to tell you, Jack, seeing the mainstream media reaction to these operations has been just truly mind-boggling for me. I was watching MSDNC this morning and I saw Hillary Clinton on there talking about these operations and how they're horrible and it's terrible that we're taking out these people who are just on boats. These are terrorists that are sending fentanyl to America, and they are killing young people in droves. 100,000 Americans died every year under the Biden administration because of these deadly drugs. This is a real threat to the homeland, and it's crazy to me to see people in the mainstream media not understand that threat and actually go the other way and carry water for these narco-terrorists and the Maduro regime and all of these people who seek to harm American citizens. It's got to stop, and we're going to keep working towards that goal. And we're going to keep ensuring that this operation is a success, despite the mainstream media's efforts to, say that it's illegal, which it's not. It's perfectly and totally legal. Where all of these Democrats that are going into apoplexy, that we're actually taking care of our hemisphere for once.
Well, the purpose of having a military is to defend the homeland. That's number one. And it seems that other administrations have had different ideas about what that means, defending the homeland in places that are very, very far from the homeland. And certainly the military has operations that have a global reach. But when it comes to the core mission of the United States military, you would think that defense of the homeland would actually be number one.
Yes, absolutely. And it is for this president and this secretary. And that's why President Trump was elected. He got the popular vote. He has a mandate from the American people to enact this agenda. People were so fed up of defending foreign countries' borders in far-flung places that didn't necessarily suit our interests. We're putting America first. And America first means we need a Western hemisphere where America is dominant again. We can't have cartels running the Western hemisphere. That is totally unacceptable. And what these strikes do is not only do they take out narco-terrorists who are actively bringing drugs to our country. I've seen a lot of people in the mainstream media trying to claim, oh, you don't know that these people were narco-terrorists. You said earlier, Jack, you're a Navy intel guy. You know how this works. We have credible intelligence. Without a doubt, we know who these people are. We know where they're going, and we know where they're coming from. We know what's on their boats. We are going to take this threat very, very seriously and ensure that the American people are kept safe. As you say, Homeland Security is a priority for this department and this president, we're not going to relent on it. And we're going to make sure that every cartel in the Western Hemisphere knows that, because when people see these strikes, whether they're a cartel in Mexico or a cartel in Venezuela, they are put on notice.
And I should also ask him, I mentioned before about obviously the attacks on the ICE facilities. And are these operations then being conducted with, and obviously I understand you can't get into classified intelligence, but would it be safe to say that there is coordination between the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of War on this?
Absolutely. We work really closely with our interagency partners, whether it's the U.S. Coast Guard, to ensure that we are just kind of implementing a policy that is going to ensure that we're all working together and collaborating, intel sharing, all of that sort of great stuff, right? So we're working alongside our government partners because this really is a whole of government approach. As I said in the beginning, President Trump early on designated these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And what that did for the department is allow us to start taking these threats more seriously than we had in the past. And we are working with the interagency to do that. And we're going to continue to ensure that they can't traffic drugs throughout our hemisphere and endanger American lives any longer.
No, it really seems that it's just remarkable to me to think that not only as having a Navy background, but also just as a father who's someone who lives in the United States, have been living on the East Coast. I'm in Phoenix right now, and you see what effect that these cartels and the narcotic operations have had on these cities, many of which, by the way, fuel the street violence that we see in cities like Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore, so many others across the country. And yet there are so many politicians that don't actually want to step up and treat this like the operation that it needs to be. They want to play these games. They say we need social reform. They say we need all these things. Whereas, look, sometimes you just need a hammer.
Absolutely. I think we've forgotten that the solutions are often very simple. We like to create more problems and try to act as though things can't be fixed. We have found very quickly that all we needed was a new president and a new Secretary of War to get to work and to get all of this done. We're delivering on promises. We're making steps that we haven't taken at this department in decades. We used to have under, 20 years ago, we used to take the Western Hemisphere pretty seriously. And then we got bogged down in the Middle East and nation building. And we were over there. We didn't really know what the objectives were, what, success looked like, but we just kept throwing money at it anyway, while politicians in D.C. got super rich and advocated that we stay there for even longer. Now we've got a secretary and a War Department that are focused on our main mission, keeping America safe. And that means secure borders. We've got a lot of troops down at the border that are working with DHS to make sure no one's crossing. I can tell you, Jack, I've been down there a few times now. It is all quiet on the Western Front. There's nobody crossing our southern border anymore. And we're going even further, right? We're making sure that our waters are secure, that our shores are secure. That's something that's really important to the American people, so it should be important to the Department of War. This is a department that is going to put America first every single mission. And that's what we've seen with Secretary Hegseth. And it's really fantastic, I think, for our troops as well, right? They get to protect their people, their neighborhoods. They're not just nation building. They're not just defending allies, right? They get to actually know that when they're standing post on our southern border, they're protecting Americans directly behind them. I think that's really impactful. And that's something that you hear from our troops when you talk to them down at the border.